Thursday, the 27th of November. As I said this morning, this month is going extremely fast. Another month down until the end of the year, pretty much. Less than a week until Christmas. And yeah, time is certainly flying by fast. So look, guys, if this is your first time to the channel, please be respectful to the community. Please be respectful to the chat, respectful to me, respectful to yourself. Otherwise, the ban hammer does come down, and it's not something that we like to do. I actively encourage your chat. Look, if you want to come in here with banter, that's absolutely fine. If you are a rival fan, again, that's cool. We absolutely have some amazing fans that come on this channel from rival clubs, and really respectful and really good people. So look, get in there with your chats. Leo, legend, my friend, says Palace 1, United 3. Leo, I like your optimism. I really do. Look, we'll get into that tonight as well. The next thing to say, look, I am not a dictator of this chat. I really try to let you have your views, and tonight is that perfect show. This is the late night show. This is pretty much where I pretty much hand it over to you guys. I come in with a bit of a theme. Tonight we can again talk about some squad cost. The new thing that's going to come in at the end of the year. Now, I've heard a couple of things said on that, how we basically got a bunch of money to spend. We can talk about that. Get into the Palace game, as Leo has already. I want to know about your predictions, what you think the squad's going to be. Look, tonight this is open. This is a late night show. This is for you guys to get into. So look, guys, I really do give you your opinions. If you've been here before, get into the chat. I pretty much do read them out. This is why these shows take so long, because this really is the channel that gives you your opinion. There's super chats, I know that stuff on here as well, but look, there's no obligation for that. I really do try to read out your chat. So look, get in there with your opinions on anything United. So tonight, squad cost. We can talk about the squad cost stuff as well, because I do have some opinions on that, and I think there are some not misinformation, but I think that we can discuss that, because I do think it's really important that we get into all that good stuff as well. João Gomes as well from Wolves, apparently 50 million. United are in for him again. There's Anderson. There's all that talk again that just won't go away. And I really want to have a realistic conversation about that. Are we realistically in for these plays? If we go for these, you talk only to you. No, not really, mate. You talk only to you. No. At the moment, possibly, but I tend to get people on here, and it doesn't really matter. Doesn't matter. If I'm talking to me, I'm talking to me. Who cares? Look, you don't have to be here. And the very fact that you're talking here as well, you're here as well. So look, Glazers in, club would be nothing. Glazers in, Harif says, Glazers in, the club would be nothing without them. Interesting. Are you from the UK? Yes, I am. I am from the UK. Leo says, we're getting the band back together. Vavel, Kyle McCauley, head of senior scouting. Look, Leo, it was always going to happen. Jobs for the boys. And again, get in there with that, because I want your opinion as well on the football structure of this club in terms of long term. Do we think that long term this is going to work? We have presided over an INEOS over a 38 game period of the Premier League. Our average win ratio is 38.6%. And don't forget, since INEOS have been here February 2024, coming up for 2 years, they bought players. They bought Eric Ten Hag players, and again, I'll be interested to go through what you think about these players as well. Scott, legend of the chat, says, I told you about Gomez, JB. No, Scott, you did, my friend, but I'm still not convinced. Evening, the UDC and the UDC fans, says DJ Dark Knight legend. Of course you are, my friend. How you doing? Keep smiling. Says, I don't know who's worse, ours or you, as I'm a Liverpool fan. Look, keep smiling, my friend. You are welcome here, my buddy. Absolutely get into this chat as well. Look, I'm not a person that gloats in. I can't speak for everybody on here, but look, it is an horrific time, right? As I And this is why I try to keep a level-headed view, right? Because you never know what's going to happen in life. Now, I learned that. I learned that the hard way, supporting this club. Success for many years, and you become complacent. And I think for me, having this era, as much as it's awful, it kind of does make you appreciate, in my opinion, when the good times happen. So look, I feel for you right now, because I always feel for the fans. I always feel for the fans. We can have banter, and it's always good to have that banter, because when United and Liverpool, in my opinion, the two biggest clubs in the Premier League, the two biggest clubs, in my opinion, in football, in English football for the last 50, 60 years. It's a beautiful thing when two clubs are the rivals again. So look, let's hopefully get back to those days. Let's go through it. Bruno will leave in the summer, says Harif. Possibly. JB Wayne, the Liverpool fan, said he can't get on for some reason. I said, hope you're well. I don't know why, mate. He's not banned. I don't think he's banned. Absolutely shouldn't be banned. Let me I'll have to check it. Let me see. I don't think he is banned. He shouldn't be banned anyway, because Wayne's a legend. Let me see. YouTube Studio. I don't think he is banned. No. I did wonder where Wayne was, to be honest with you. Let's have a little look. He's hidden. Yeah, Wayne's not on the list. Wayne is not on the list. I don't know why he can't get on. I don't know. I can't see him. Can't see him. Hopefully he can join, but yeah. I don't know. That's sad, because I really like Wayne. Wayne's a legend of this chat. Hit the like button. Please do. Keep smiling, says United will turn it around eventually, but not under the manager you have at the moment. Look, and again, it's really interesting, people's opinions, right? And the one thing that I'll always say here is that, look, I will, and especially tonight, this is your show. I'll try not to give you my opinion tonight, because this really is your show, right? So I don't necessarily share that. I think keep smiling. I think for me, look, Amorim may not be the guy. I fully accept that, right? He may not be the guy. But I think there are bigger things here. I think Liverpool have a really well structured behind the scenes. I think that's why you do well, and that's why I think if Slot goes, and let me ask you a question: would you sack Slot? And that's a question, and that's not in retaliation to us. I'd be interested in the mindset of a Liverpool fan. I'm not having a great season. Would you get rid of Slot now? because I personally wouldn't, but I bumped into him on another channel called the United Elder channel. You think United can get into Europe? Um, I do, but not with this squad. Not with this squad. We've seen this time and time again. Look, we've seen this time and time again, right? Now, I've been accused at times of being negative, right? And I should just go on and support this team. I support the club. I support fans. I support this community. There's nothing for me bigger than that. I will support this team on the day of the game, because these players. And now, what I will do now is I will refrain from criticising these players. Right, we are close to the game day. I will have my say on these players up until a certain point. It's game day. Now, it's time for these players now to pull up their big boy pants. It's time for these players to show us now what they've got again. I still don't trust these players. Even if these players win on Palace on Sunday, I don't trust these players. I want the manager to stay. I am manager in. Doesn't necessarily mean I'm Amorim in, but I am now. Even after the Grimsby game, I'm backing this manager because I don't want to sack another coach. I am manager in, and that stands for me for I am the manager in, because I want a manager to succeed. So, in some respects, I've absolutely got no problem in you guys wanting Amorim out, because that's your opinion. And look, I completely get that opinion. But for me right now, I just think if we do something different, let's try a different approach, right? Let's try something different for a change. And what is the common theme for Ollie, for Ranić, for Erik ten Hag? Is players. And I'm not just going to blame these players. Now, there are some that have been here over multiple coaches. But in essence, the common theme here are players. So look, let's give a manager his players and let's see what he can do. Keep Smiling says Arne Slot is running out of time, which most of Liverpool fans have got it as we want him to succeed. And do you know what? I think that is the right and the correct mindset to have, right? I hate managers being sacked. And, yes, on here from time to time, you're going to get the banter, and I've seen the banter, Arne Slot, are you Erik ten Hag in disguise, and all that sort of stuff. I get that, right? But ultimately, from one fan to another who has been through the last 13 years of crap, and we've seen some awful stuff. I implore fans to give a manager time. Sometimes a manager may just not be right. You look at Postecoglou, Forest. Was it the right thing to do to get rid of him? If you look at the results that's happened, then yes. And sometimes you've got to sack a coach. But I think if you're a Liverpool fan, United fan, I think tonight you've got to hold strong. You've got to believe and be strong, because I don't see what United sacking a manager. Is that a Goldbridge haircut? Is it? Maybe I'm morphing into him. JB Bridge. Maybe I'm morphing into him. Particularly after the shorts that I made. Just saying it like how things were. Kit Smile says you need Roy Keane just to wake the club up again, even if it's to the end of the season. We need something. I fully take the comment on board that this club needs something. Is Amorim the guy? I don't know. I'm going to support. Look, I want to give him another season. I am of this opinion that Rome wasn't built in a day. We have departed from everything that we've known as a club. When Liverpool got Slot, Liverpool have a way to play, and the good thing about that is you've got the board that are functional. You've got a team behind the scenes that are functional, and you can just almost pick up a coach and just slot that coach in, right? So it's different. It's different for us because we've got a toxic club. Behind the scenes, it's a disaster. We've got debt. And, I fully appreciate that, they are trying to build something behind the scenes, but I just don't know what that is yet. We've got a playing squad that's toxic, a playing squad that are full of. We don't have any winners in that squad. We've got a captain who couldn't lead a horse to water, and I just think that's the difference. I think if Liverpool were to sack Slot, you could go and get another coach who plays a sort of Klopp style or a Liverpool style, put him in, and I think you could be ready to go. But look, Slot has won the league. Slot should be given at least a season, And again, as long as you don't do an us and you don't go down to 15th, I think you'll be okay. In the old days, too much toxic for me, man. If he keeps losing matches, he'll have to go. I agree. Original Pro Master says, hi, hello, my friend. Does an average person have a valid opinion on the professional game? Does an average person have a valid opinion on the professional game? Yeah, I do. I think if you're a fan of this club or a fan of any club, right, you're entitled to your opinion, right? I'm damn well sure that I annoy people on here. I know I do, because people come on and they tell me, right? I get it. I do, right? But I've watched football for a long, long time, and I've got my own thoughts on it. Does it mean that I'm wrong? No. Does it mean that I'm right? No. Does it mean that my opinions are better than yours? No. But if you look at this club, and I'm going to use this club as an example, right? The managers of this club don't seem to learn from the previous coach. And what I mean is, on here, I think we're very logical. I think you guys are very, very smart. We know these players. We've spoken about these players many, many times. And look, I'm not going to go into the individual players tonight, because I'm going to, as much as I don't trust these players, they've got to have my support, because they are going to play the game. But we know we could have told Amorim what he should have done. We were screaming on here, Bruno Fernandes. If you trust him as your captain, you're going to live or die on what you choose to do with him. We all watched the pre-season games. Like, do we know the intrinsic workings of what goes on, but like in the club? No. But we've all watched football for long enough. We've all seen plays. You can watch the attitude of these players. Now, I'm very, very fortunate that I've watched the time of not just us in our pomp days. Now, I've watched many teams, eras of teams, that have gone by. Arsenal's teams, United teams, Liverpool teams, Madrid teams, Inter Milan teams, AC Milan teams, Spanish team. I've watched so many different eras of leagues and that sort of stuff, whereby football has changed in terms of the types of players, but fundamentally the attitudes of players haven't changed. So you can build up a library of different players that play the game, and some of it is such an obvious thing that I'm baffled as to why sometimes Amorim can't see the sorts of players. James Barry says, who do we get in if Amorim goes? Also, we'll be left the more players from his style and doesn't work for the next manager. Exactly, James. Mate, I think that's a fantastic point. Guys, I'm getting your points tonight. I will bring up some stuff as well, but getting your opinions. Look, James, I don't know. This is why I am Amorim in at the moment. I am manager in. If you could say to me, right, I can get you a coach. This coach will come into this side and he will win you the league. He will get this team playing, and I guarantee you he will win you the league. I will bite your hand off, right? But you don't know. You just don't know. So I think that we've gone down this road, right? We went down a certain road, which we have done for the last 13 years. We were on a cycle for 13 years of Buy players, they don't respond, sack a manager. You know, you let the inmates run the asylum. And what I mean by that is if you let the players run this club, which they have, what do you expect to happen? So I think we needed to break the cycle. And I think as fans, we need to hold our breath. And I think we just need to stay on course. Because I think if we don't stay on course, look, I'm of this opinion, right? We're not going to go down. I don't think so. You know, if we still finish around 10 or 12, look, give the manager more players, because I don't want to sack another coach. And this for me probably sums it up, right? Is that I don't want to sack a manager where there can be any excuse for the coach, right? Right now, there are 11 excuses on the pitch, maybe 9. And I'm not comfortable. I'm not comfortable with saying, look, I want Amorim to look, as much as he makes decisions that are baffling, I think sometimes he has to make them, right? I don't want when I sack a coach, I want him to have no excuses, right? If Amorim gets his players and these players play the same, then at that point I'll be happy to say Amorim is not the guy. To go back to your comment, if his style doesn't work, and then we've bought a load of these players and we have no wingers and we don't have those players, then that's a decision. The club then has to go back and say, well, look, we've entered down this this road, and we have to continue. So we're going to have to continue with this back three style, because otherwise, as you say, if we don't sign these players, and we don't have players for the next coach, we can't rebuild this squad over and over again. So I don't know. Dark Knight says, United has no backbone these days. We have become a team of foreigners. Nikarutsu, Arnie flop, you mean? Amorim is at least doing better and didn't have 450 million to blow in the transfer window. United wins, says Steve. Palace played in France tonight and we're expecting the usual reactions. No excuses. Original Promise says, what did Amorim accomplish to land this job? And I think that's a fantastic question. What did Amorim say? At the time, potentially, who was out there? I don't know. But that is a great question. What did Amorim do? I don't know. Amorim must have done something to impress these guys. I would love to know. I was going to say, the flexibility in Amorim's system is not that good. Let's focus on signing a new CM, a wing back, centre forward, then maybe a backup keeper. Agree with you. I do agree. Look, we've got onto the Gomes thing as well, and we'll go on to the squad cost as well, because I think you're right. I think this window. I think if INEOS are ambitious and want to sign some players, I will start to think that they're serious, because if we want European football, if we want Anderson, we want these players and we want to be good again, we have to take a chance. This club has to take a chance. And if INEOS are different, and I'm talking about different mindsets of fans for the manager, we also have to have a different mindset for the club as well. So let's see. But it says it took Arteta a while. Exactly. If Slot gets beat on the weekend, he's definitely gone. Wave Cutter says we need Vinicius Jr. to counter Chelsea and Estevao. I mean, Estevao's brilliant. What an absolute player. Kevin McGee says Glasner will be in for the start of next season if Amorim doesn't get Europe. I said Xmas, but I'm as convincing as X-Max Pantomime Dame. I love it. We sacked Ollie for finishing 7th. Yeah, Amorim still has a job. And look, that's a good point. I can't argue with that. But I should tell you for why. One of the reasons I think that Amorim is still in situ is because INEOS can't fail. This is INEOS Sky, and I'll give you a different opinion on that as well, that I basically had towards the start of the season as well. This is INEOS's guy. INEOS cannot fail. If INEOS fail, then the knives are going to be out in terms of this is going to be Nice again. They're sacking another manager. They came in and this is their guy. Like Ten Hag could be sacked, right? Because they could sack him basically with no comeback. This is their guy. They are presiding at the moment over a mess. They're presiding over 38 games, and I think it was something, we've got a 38% win, which is horrific. And I think in every game we've played, I think there's something like 26 wins, 28 losses, and 16 draws. Like that is in their time that they're presiding over a hot mess. So INEOS can't fail. So I think Amorim is getting a lot of leeway and time because they cannot afford for this manager not to they can't afford him to fail. They've backed him a bit as well. Now they've allowed him to get rid of some players. And again, like I've seen today, this clear out stuff. And I will get onto that as well, how United are going to fund a clear out, right? The second phase. We didn't have the first phase of a clear out. So I want your opinions on that. So what do you think about this news today about United are going to have this clear out? United are going to have this second clear out, and all this money that we're gonna save. I've actually got some facts that I will read out again about the players and about the savings that can happen. I would bring back Ollie in a heartbeat. Maybe we should look at Van Persie. Ollie loved the club for Amorim, and the rest is just a well-paid job. We should have never have sacked Van Gaal. He was doing great and then won the FA Cup, and the next day sacked. What the F? This club is look, United fan. Again, guys, these are valid opinions. These are opinions that I want to know tonight because we're going into the Palace game, in my opinion, as second best. We're going in my opinion, as underdogs, which is disgusting. For one, like I don't trust these players. I trusted them again since we got the 2 wins, the draws. I thought, given the benefit of the doubt, despite my eyes seeing what they saw, I thought, look, give them a break. 10 games. Let's see what they can do. At the moment, they failed on the first hurdle. Jose won us the FA Cup. I regret the Jose one. I do. That is one that I regret that we did. I never supported that one. The Jose one is basically the one that I regret. Amorim looks and sounds like a dead man walking. I don't think the players we have believe in his system. I wish I knew. After the loss, I gave up, says Dexter. Mate, I think many of us did. Amorim and Ten Hag were hipster coaches winning trophies in crap leagues. Yeah, I told you he beat City in Europe 5-1. The United ball fell in love with him. You should sign. Yeah, I'm not saying that. If Ruben loses his job, then I want us to try for the manager that's proven, Conte, for example. And do you know what? As we are talking about this tonight, I think if we sack him, as Scott says there, if we sack him, I'm done. It will be the same stuff. If we sack him, I'm lost. Because the reason why I'm lost is for me, it's not necessarily it's not the manager as such, right? It's what this represents, right? It's what this coach represents. Is it represents, look, if we go down this path again and we sack the manager, this cycle continues. And where does it stop? Where does it stop? It's I get it, but it's not Amorim that signs these players. And let's be clear on this. It's not Amorim now that signs the players. It is the footballing side. It's not Amorim that plays on the pitch. It's not Amorim that makes Fernandes play the way that he does. It's him who selects Fernandes at 8, but he doesn't make Fernandes the player that Fernandes is in his own head. He can't make Luke Shaw quicker. Luke Shaw's the best of a bad bunch. Apparently, Casemiro, he can't turn back the time and make Casemiro 30, 29 again. That can't happen. You know, he can't make Maguire any better. You know, he can't do, or, you know, he's got the players that he's got, you know, that, and it's coming to the conclusion, look, you know, Xerxes, you know, the jury is out on him, you know, and yes, I fully take and I concede the point with him, like, he hasn't played all season, you know, we're expecting him to come into a game and be great, you know, he looks like the sort of guy that needs games. But my caveat to that will always be you were a United player. We had players like Park, O'Shea, Fortune, Johnson, Hennenberg at times, you know, Solskjaer. We had these players who didn't play every game, but they did everything that they could. And when they were called upon, they come into the side and they slotted into this side. Why aren't players like a Mainu? Why aren't players like a Xerxes? Why do they need special game time? You know, they have one game a week. What are they doing in preparation? What are the club doing in preparation? So look, I take the point to it. Look, tonight is your opinions. I don't share it. I think if we sack this coach now, I think it will just continue the cycle. Brad says, I don't think it's an ego thing with INEOS. I think they have looked at slight improvements they've seen and are actually believing that he can improve us, but will take time. Again, you know, get in your INEOS opinions as well. My only comment on that would be this, right? The people that we've brought in on the footballing side, there's been a lot of spin around it, other than one or two. Omar, who came from City, there's this big, there seems to be this big spin and myth around him. What did he actually do at City? You know, he was C something or you know, and he was that good that City just went, okay, goodbye. You know, what did he actually do? Wilcox, you know, the director of football there for a while, and then was at Man City's academy. Why does that qualify him as best in class? It doesn't. You know, like I get that the INEOS are doing something that I have a different opinion on INEOS to some. I am going to keep it tonight to the footballing side, and I can only judge what I see. Right, I can only give you my opinion on what I see. I don't think with INEOS it's an ego thing. I think it's a vanity project from Sir Jim. And I think it's not an ego thing. I think it is a lack of experience. I don't think they realised how big this club is. I don't think they realised that their method of treating this club like a business, like a company, it doesn't work. Football doesn't work like that. You know, look, I fully concede that we're in debt up to our eyes, and I'll go to the squad cost thing next, right? We're up to our eyes in debt. That's not INEOS's fault, right? But INEOS did, whether INEOS fans like it or not, INEOS stuck their nose in our business. They didn't need to get involved. We're still crippled by the debt. We've got £500 million worth of transfer debt, £800 million of debt, £1.2 billion in debt. That's the debt itself is not on them, but facilitating the cockroaches that caused that. INEOS Amrin has more jam than Sainsbury's. Dark Dealer says, I love our fans, UDC. We all love our club. I mean, we're all the best, no matter if we disagree. And that's the thing. That is the thing on here. You know, it's. I read out your comments because look, it's important for you guys to vent. It's important. And it's also important to show that even though we disagree, and I know that I do people's heads in, it's important to listen to each other. We may not agree, but we can still come to a sort of understanding Brad says also Palace is really difficult game for us considering they play a very similar system and they're much better at it. We need to get rid of these Casemiro types. Star players on high salaries who are old and now suffer dementia on the pitch. Good evening, says Graham. Michael Masters, how are you, Graham? Legend, my friend. I'm doing extremely well. I hope you are as well, my friend. Brad, I'd love Simeone, but my only concern would be his type of football. He says, go pay compensation for how constantly leg tied at Newcastle. I like him. I do like Eddie Howe. I know some of you can't get on board with this, but I still back. I still back him. I do still back him because I don't want to sack Amorim. But look, there does come a time. There will come a time where if we get through these next 10 games and we've lost the next 10 games, Amorim will be sacked. Like, I don't need to sit here and say Amorim out or Amorim in, because ultimately, whether I am Amorim in, which I am, if Amorim, whether I like it or not, if Amorim doesn't win games, he's going to get sacked. And there's nothing that I can do. I can only hope and pray that this club changes. I mean, real change. But there's nothing that I can do. I've heard Alex Ferguson has taken up Michael Myers in. I love it. I heard that Alex Ferguson take over Liverpool and sort of get sacked. Nikki says, hi. Hello, Nikki. Hope you're doing extremely well. I was on a Liverpool channel an hour ago. They were thinking we don't sack the managers. That's Liverpool. If Slot was at United, he'd have gone 3 games ago. Do you own any Man United shares? No, I don't. I don't, because I've never put money into the Glazers' pocket. I just won't do it. If it was a fan-based consortium or it was a fan-led club, then yes. But I'm not putting money into this toxic club right now. Make of that what you will. Steve says they are milking the taxpayer stadium of the North Project. Ratcliffe, Lord Neville, Glazers, they don't give. And Steve, mate, I am with you on that one. I think it's disgusting. Look, I am not in favour of the stadium. I've seen channels and fans, say, I can't wait for the stadium to be built. The stadium's going to be amazing. The stadium's going to be the future, right? I'm opposed to it. I am opposed to it on the basis that I'm opposed that what it represents. It represents greed. If the Glazers had come into this club, looked after the stadium, right? Looked after the stadium, fixed it, taken care of it, because you buy something as historic as this club, you are a custodian. Your job is to look after it, right? Take care of it. They haven't done that. They've let it rot and rust. If the Glazers had to come in, put some money in, looked after this club and said, look, guys, we've got to move. We want to progress as a club. Look, we're not going to knock it down. We will probably turn it into housing, or we'll turn it into something that is a respectable thing, right? But they haven't done that. If they said, look, we're going to build a stadium and we're going to regenerate the land around it, because look, we want to give people homes. We believe that, as a club, it's our we need to be involved in the community. We want to build homes. We need to build a stadium because look, we want to be best in class. We're not going to knock down the ground. We're going to keep it there, and we're going to build a stadium because we want it, because we want a world-class stadium and we want to progress. I could live with that. I can't live with greed. This is about greed. Sir Jim is here for greed. The taxpayer are going to fund it. Look, I'm embarrassed. I'm embarrassed the fact that my club, the owners of my club, are going cap in hand to the government to get the stadium built. It is embarrassing. the Glazers, I've said this example tons of times. The Glazers' dad, Sir Malcolm Glazer, when he bought the Buccaneers, they basically threatened to move their NFL franchise elsewhere, and it's a big deal to have a NFL franchise in your state is a huge thing, right? So they threatened to move. So Tampa basically they introduced a tax, and they built the Glazers a stadium and basically gave it to them. So this is their plan. This is what they do. Imagine a situation whereby the Glazers have never paid a penny for the club. They take dividends out of the club. This club will then be worth billions of pounds. They'll then get a stadium built, and whether or not they, so they'll make a percentage from that as well. It's genius. It is absolutely I detest the Glazers. I detest the ownership of this club. But imagine you buying everything on debt with someone else's money, and you're going to make billions out of it. It's genius. I can't. It is genius. They have no scruples. They will happily take your tax. They'll happily take that council tax to fund their pockets. It is disgraceful. Is it weird that Kai Havertz would be great for our system? I just love him as a player. Look, that's your opinion. People may share that opinion. I think Kai Havertz is a versatile player. I think if we want to progress as a club and get to the Champions League, I think we probably need more than him. But look, right now, I take anybody. Eddie Howe for United, calling Big Sam. Newcastle is Eddie's limit. We need Saudi to just give the Glazers what they asked for and just get them off the club. Catherine says, I think you need to get rid of the players who are just here for the wages, like Ruben and gave Ferguson 3 years. Your club needs to be stable. Catherine, I agree with you. I really, really do. They all live in mansions and fly first class. Our working man pays the bills. It's two says, hello, hope you're doing extremely well. I will never forgive what's happened to the Theatre of Dreams. The new stadiums are soulless. I agree, my friend. We still have time to repair Old Trafford. We don't have to build a new stadium. It's not mandatory. They just need money. Exactly. Exactly that. What happened to Beckham and friends. So I'll give you what I know on that. And then I think we should go through the squad cost bit, right? So what happened to the Beck thing? So look, a couple of weeks ago, we kind of spoke about it, is what people need to understand about this consortium. And this consortium is real. The problem is that the last time the Glazers needed to sell. So they were very vocal about it because they needed somebody to come in and do something with the club. This time, this transaction will be a proper business transaction for many, many reasons. One, because if companies take over a different company, and I've experienced this as well, you don't basically come out with it until the deal's done, because it impacts markets, it impacts shares. Now, that's another reason as well, because don't forget that there are shares involved here as well, so they can manipulate the market. There is this whole share thing where if INEOS are bought out now, whoever buys them has to pay $33 per share, but that's not just INEOS' shares, that's the Glazers shares as well. That is the other shareholder shares. So that's why when we talk about the value of the club being £4 to £5 billion, when in actuality it's only worth £2, it's because of the value of those shares. So a consortium maybe just like, look, if we wait another year or two because there's an expiration date on those shares, they'll be able possibly to get the club at a cheaper price. Also, we may need to consider that once they break ground on the stadium and they break ground on the land around it, look, it's going to take somebody. It's going to be the best part of £8 to £10 billion. So it takes time. It takes time. So all I'm going to say is it's just look, this club is up for sale. It is up for sale at the right price. We've got to be patient, and we're not going to know until until such time the deal happens. It may never happen, but we're not going to know. So I think that anybody right now that's saying that they've got the no on this is talking out their arse, because nobody knows. So Magnetize says will Manchester play good in the next match? I'm gonna say no. Darkest, read the book World's Largest Cash Machine about the Glazer purchase. I agree completely. Scott says we beat Palace 3-1. I don't see how, Scott. Look, this team is capable of anything it likes. It wouldn't surprise me if we go to Palace and win, but I'm not backing it. I'm not backing it, Scott, mate. I love the as you said that we were going to win 5-0 in the previous game. Look, I admire Scott's enthusiasm. We need more people like Scott. We need more people like Scott. We need more people who are, always optimistic. I think we need people like me who are maybe all on the level. We also need people who INEOS in. We need all a rounded opinions. Obviously, Scott, I don't share that, my friend, because I just don't believe that there's something that we can do right now. But look, let's see. Trust me, there's a player that I've seen him. Bex don't give a damn, but the price of Miami has gone up. I wouldn't touch him with. For all these lost souls, I used to be about kicking a ball around with your mates, hoping to be taken on. And then he goes, look, when I first started playing football, I used to live on a hill, right? And we used to play football up and down a hill. The amount of times the ball would go all the way down the hill, and we'd be playing, like, I don't know what you guys would sort of call it, but we'd play like FA Cup, we'd play, winner stays on, we'd play all sorts of different stuff, right? And it was about not playing because you wanted to become a professional player. You played because you just loved playing. I used to pretend to be Irwin. I used to pretend to be Giggsy, right? And it was never because I wanted to become a professional player. It was more so because I just loved the game. And we'd spend hours at the park. We spent hours at the park, put on my kit, and we'd practice free kicks. We do that sort of stuff. And I think now that gets lost. I think that pure love and that pure joy of just, and we used to kick balls that were. Remember when you had the balls and you used to have the hexagons and they used to peel off the ball, and we used to have a ball where all of those were gone, and we'd be kicking that round. We would literally kick anything other than cats, but we would pretty much kick most things that were a ball like. It was a fantastic time. We need Beckham's goals, Neville Brothers, but take over, and Keane in the locker room roles. So it's been announced Ruben will get the whole season if we get good results over the festive period. So they are basically saying that they are looking for a new manager. I think a well-run club will always have a list. I think a well-run club will always have a list of candidates, because you have to. Do I think they're actively looking for a coach? I think they're probably putting things in place. I think they're probably having those initial chats. But you've got to. You've got to. I think you've got to. I think it would be unwise not to have those chats. It doesn't mean he's going to get sacked. But look, let's not pretend here, right? Whether I'm Amorim in or out, this last year has been horrific. I would still back the manager if he finished 15th this season. And I back him because the principles that I have, I may be wrong in that, but that's fine. But if Amorim doesn't get the right results in these next 10 games, there is no way on this planet, whether I believe or not it is his fault, they will not give him the cash to rectify it, and they will sack him. This club collapsed and Fergie left because David Gill quit on the same day. The bank managers were brought in to run the club, Steve, mate, and David Gill gets forgotten about. We used to play a game called Gomer. Anyone heard of that? No, no. And then mum would get a shout in, you're late for your tea. So there was always a rule. There was always a rule that when the street lights came on, that was when you basically would come home. And literally, I'd be out all day. We would be out all day from probably about 9 in the morning, up the park, and then I'd pop down to my nan's house, who lived around the corner. We'd have a drink of water, back at the park, and we'd be there for hours. Who's your favourite player? Says Catherine. The thing is, I don't do favourite players. I just don't. When I was a child, like I can tell you, like my some of my heroes from when I was a child. I don't do favourite players now because I just don't. Some of my heroes are people like Hughes, so Sparky, Roy Keane, Irwin, Paul Parker. I used to just love those sorts of players. So for me, like being Welsh, it was always Giggsy and Hughes. I mean, I think for me, Mark Hughes was one of the first players that I really thought was an absolute legend. So for me, people can have Cristiano, Rooney, etc. But for me, it was always Mark Hughes or Keno. I think for me, those two. But nowadays, look, I don't do favourite players. Now, there are players that I respect within the team, but I don't do that. We played Keepy Uppy Heads. Yeah. I love Inzaghi, but he can't speak English, so Conte because he's Prim Prev. Obi says, hey JB, legend. Has any managers we've had post looked happy after 9 months? No. And again, Obi, mate, we do, you and I do think along the same lines. I do agree. Rajat says, sup S Club. Look, mate, Chelsea fan, Stephanie, legend. Good evening, JB. I hope you're doing extremely well. I'm drinking the tea and following you, buddy. Thank you so much. Look, Chelsea fans, welcome on here as well. We don't mind the banter. Look, I will say this. I said at the start of the season, don't sleep on you guys, because if you get it right, you could do something this year. I think Chelsea are still very up and down, but look, the Barcelona game, I mean, fantastic. I mean, I don't necessarily support all English clubs, but look, when it comes to teams like that, you've definitely got my support. 10-man Everton is true. Look, or the only thing I'm going to say as a United fan to a Chelsea fan, look, until you come back and you win a league, look, you've won a couple of games. Let's just wait a couple of more games. Look, we did, but and what I'm going to say to you is, we're crap, but how did we play against you guys? So that's all I'm saying. What was the score between us? You're calling us crap, but what was the score between us, mate? I'm just saying. What was the score? You're coming on here and giving us jip, but what was the score? And again, look, let's just call this up, right? Because this is something that I do like to do. As much as I am a realistic person, and I still think we don't finish in the top 6. Let's have a little look, shall we? So at the moment, we've been absolutely horrific, but Chelsea are 5 points ahead of us. In a league that we've been absolutely horrific in, I don't think 5 points is that bad. It's probably going to be more, but it's just I just think teams, fans should definitely wait a little bit longer before they start giving us jip. Look, we beat you 2-1, so that's all I'm saying, mate. I'm Welsh. It's my brother, the United supporter. Look, Welsh legends. I am Welsh as well. Nikki T says we played Garden Hopping Kirby. I'm a Chelsea fan. Catherine, look, you don't have to apologise. It is not a requirement to come onto this channel and be a United fan. We don't mind the banter. We don't mind. Look, we welcome opinions here. We don't necessarily just talk about this club. We do, of course, we do. But look, I welcome as many opinions as we can, especially to this show. This is a late night show, right? So this is what we do here. This is your show. I've got some topics to talk about. I may not get to talk about them because this is your show tonight. We could leave the house in those days at 7 a.m. with your sister and best mate, go fishing, climb trees, as long as we were home for tea. It's true. It's true, mate. It is true, mate. It was a different time. It was a different time. Viva John Terry, 2008. I was just ask yourself this. What can you do? This group of players that down tools, don't listen, can't follow instructions, injury prone, while the board sells our best academy players. OB, mate, you're speaking truth, mate. I couldn't agree more. Nick T says, I was also brought up in the country, climbing trees, building dens, playing cops. Is there anything better as a child than building a den? Is there anything better than building a den? I don't think so. Building a den is just like one of those things whereby I just love building a den. And then when you get older, I was very, very fortunate in Wales where I lived. There was like a hill, right? And it was covered in trees. And we used to spend hours up in those trees. The thought of letting my children out on the street and go into a wood. I don't have kittens. I'm very fortunate here. I've got some sort of woods just to the side of me. The thought of letting my girls go into the woods and make a den, not a chance. Scott says it was headers and volleys, of course, no bounce. Had to score 9 volleys and a header. If you're the keeper, caught the ball, the person who took the shot went in goals. Yeah. I played that as well. Betty's, you got the ball. Oh, mate, I got the ball blasted at me many, many times. I can name 5 problems that need addressing before thinking about sacking the manager. OB, mate, I agree with you. I can name Jesus. You could go Glazers, INEOS, the medical team, the players, there is so much. There is so much. So look, let's get right. So I want to touch on the squad cost stuff. And there's a bunch of stuff that's come out of this, right? And my accountant brain and my accounting brain. Now look, I'm not going to profess right now that I sort of fully understand the intrinsic rules of this, but my accountancy brain has been working and just looking at the sum. So look, there's this squad cost rule that's going to come in and basically says that you can spend 85%. You can have 85% of your costs against your income, right? So you've got to have that in there. If you're in European competition, it's 70% or 75%, right? So what a lot of channels and everyone else is saying out there is basically what that means is that United, because of their income, are going to have a bunch of cash to spend. So there's going to be massive headroom. Now you can argue that because they're looking to bring that wage bill down again. So your difference between your cost and the income that you earn, that potentially if you bring that down, then you're going to have this massive headroom. I can't even pronounce that, my friend. I'm just going to call you I can't even pronounce that. Orthol Tunas from Dubai. Look, my friend, welcome here, my friend. I hope you're doing extremely well. So I've seen and heard a lot of things out there basically saying that we're cash rich. which we sort of are, and we're going to be able to spend a load of money. We're going to be able to spend tons and tons of money, and we're going to, have this ability to be able to now pluck cash from our asses, right? There's also a rule now, which basically means for the next year, from 2026 27, you're going to be able to have almost blanket free spending, right? So you can spend, pretty much go over the limit and not be penalized for that, which is all great, right? The fundamental problem here, and I think this is what people just hear, the headline to this, people just hear this headline of revenue figures, we can spend more money, right? But what is fundamental here is that we make 680 million, which will drop next year it's going to drop anyway. We still made 36 million pounds loss. It doesn't matter what your revenue is if you're still losing money. So if we make, for example, 640 next year, and with the profit that we make is minus again, where do we pluck that money out? Now, what you can argue then is, obviously, you then got the facility that you can use for your debt, right? Now, one of the things that I'm hoping that will happen is that if we sell players, and again, this is linked to the next thing that I'm going to talk about, is the reason why I mentioned that there is because we're also being linked to this. The reason why we'll be able to spend next season is because we're guaranteed to sell a bunch of players, guaranteed to bring in this cash from players who will leave. We're going to have this clear out, right? So to bear that in mind, right now we're minus 36 million. Potentially, we could maybe say we make 15 million quid next year, right? You've only made 15 million pounds. You can't stretch that. It doesn't matter which way you try to spin this. If you make 640 million pounds and your losses are 640, you've equalized to zero. You cannot make money you don't have. So where this is important is we absolutely still have to, and I wish I'd have printed this off now, but you absolutely have to be making money and making a profit. Otherwise, this squad costing doesn't make a difference. We're still going to have to sell to buy. So the reason why it's so important for INEOS to sell players is because they know this squad cost rule is coming. So this is why they are cutting. They will get rid of a Casemiro. They are getting rid of all these players now. So Obi says this, right? Sell Biinda, Dalot, Shaw, Ugarte, Mount, and Xerxes. Look, Casemiro, and look, in essence, agree with that. If we did all that, then what we would do is actually then our ability using this squad cost would actually be better. We do have to factor in, though, okay? So this is what people are not factoring into this as well, is we still have $500 million of fees that we still have to pay. So anything on top, so let's just say next window we pay 100 mil off of that, and we put another 100 million pounds on top of that, you still got that debt. Now, of those players here, I just wanted to go through these players. Apparently, we're going to clear these out. Obi says Al-Hali wanted Bruno. Bruno already turned him down. So look, I've made a list of the players that I want to get rid of. I've got their contract and I've got their wage, okay? And we'll look at the age of what INEOS are trying to sell us next summer, of the players that you can actually sell. So, Rashford, right? I've heard people today talking about that he'll definitely go. Rashford, there is no mandatory clause to buy him. Okay, his contract doesn't end until 2028. 300k a week. I'm not classing him as gone because if he doesn't want to go and nobody's going to sell him, he stays. So now he stays. Fernandez's contract is up 2027. So again, if he wants to stay, there's nothing that we can do. So those 300k of wages per week could potentially still are here now. Casemiro on 350. His contract ends next year. Maguire 195. His contract ends next year. So those are gone. Okay, so you save money there. So Malacia, his contract is up next year. Xerxes till 2029. He stays. Luke Shaw, 2027. He stays. Delo, his contract is 2028. He stays. Mason Mount's contract is until 2028. Højlund, who some people have the misconception that it's an obligation to buy. It's not. If he wanted to come back, he'd come back. Sancho is one that will go. Onana is here till 2027. Heaton will go. Main's contract is 2027. Ugarte 2029. So when we're talking about these list of players here, there are only actually probably about 5 players that we can actually sell. So when we're talking about let's sell a Shaw, I would sell. That is my list of players there that I would sell. When you're looking at that list, the reason why I say and I call foul and spin of what we're talking about, getting rid of these players. Who's going to buy Luke Shaw? Who's going to buy Luke Shaw, whose contract ends in 2027, who's on 150, 175k a week? Zero. Are INEOS going to pay him off? No. Luke Shaw's here. Mason Mount, 2028, right? 120k. Who's going to buy him? INEOS going to pay him off? No. Højlund's the same. Højlund, hopefully, if he has a good season, but Højlund will stay. Onana, there's no obligation to sell him. Mainu, Ugarte's here till 2029. You can't. So the point is of this team here. In actuality, INEOS are not actually getting rid of these players. They are letting players go, and they're going to have to try to sell the rest of these players. But if there's nobody to buy them, they're not going to sell them. So we're being spun again. We're being spun a yarn that this club is going to have this ability to sell players. Who's going? Rashford is still here. Now, of that bomb squad, there were 5 players. 2 were sold. 1 was sold at a loss. A Garnacho was sold under the market price. INEOS have to sell to buy. Now, of those wages that we would definitely save, we're roughly saving about £42 million a year. So, and with player sales, I've seen this about player sales. If we sell players, we'll roughly save about 109 a year. We will save 109, but that's only going to be for 1 year because the player sales will happen once. So in actuality, what will then happen is we'll actually only save £45 million a year. So this whole rhetoric that we're now going to be spun about, we're going to have this that we'll sell Mason Mount, Luke Shaw, Bruno Fernandes, a Rashford and Ugarte. They're not guaranteed signings. These players are on contracts. We cannot just get rid of these players. We have to sell these players. So just don't be spun with it. So this squad cost thing will absolutely give us potentially more headroom. But if we don't have the money, if we don't make the money, we can't spend the money. That is accounting. That is the principle of accounting, right? If your revenue is less than your cost, or your cost is more, you can't spend money. It's as simple as that. Maguire and Shaw in the pivot exactly. What's OB saying? OB says Maguire is more important than people realize. Look, Maguire. Look, if we keep Maguire for another year, I don't mind. When you the thing I will say about getting rid of these players is this: if we get rid of all of our experienced players, and I think Maguire is one of those players, if we get rid of these players, these experienced players, then who is here to teach the young players? Whether or not I think these senior players, these senior pros are good enough, I don't think they are. There is still nobody experienced here to teach the youth, because the MO of this club now is basically to bring in young players. Who's going to teach these players? This is why the likes of Chelsea suffered for many, many years, because they got rid of the likes of a John Terry, a Petr Cech, a Lampard, a Drogba. Then when they didn't have those players anymore, that is when they changed. You look at an Arsenal, when they lost their Henry, when they lost their Ozil, Aubameyang, they lost Lacazette. And I'm not saying that they were fantastic players, but they lost Perez, Petit, and you can argue, they lost like their Torres, their Sakas, they lost their those sorts of players, right? It took Arteta 6 years to build that squad, because even though they didn't have players that won Champions Leagues, they didn't have players that won the league, they still had international players. They still had World Cup winners in their side. And it takes time. When you take those experienced players out, you almost then have to start again. So with OB, I get that point. The problem here for me is these two things, right? If Casemiro would be prepared to take a huge cut, and what I mean is, if Casemiro was on 80 grand a week, you'd keep him for that experience, right? You absolutely keep him for that experience, because you can't just get rid of all your experienced players. Fernandes, if Fernandes was here and he was like 34 years old, and you said to him, look, you're not going to be the captain anymore, you're not going to play as much anymore, but we need you here at a reduced wage to train these younger players. But that doesn't happen now. So I agree with OB in terms of we need some of these experienced players to stay, but the caveat to that is these players are going to want a massive wage, so we're forced to move them on. And I think that again is the mismanagement and the misplanning of this club. Is how are you? Let's just say we go and buy a brand new team of a bunch of, like an Anderson, right? Anderson, a great player. But what happens if Anderson's form dips? Like, who's here to guide him through that? Who's here to say, look, give yourself a couple of games and you'll be fine. Who's here? We're expecting these players. We'd sign Anderson, Stiller, right? And that's who we want. Like, these sort of younger guys. If they go through a bad patch, who's going to be there to say, look, guys, we've seen this before, play through it, even if the fans are on your back, we will cover your butt. Look, let's just do this as a team. That doesn't happen anymore. DJ says we should put Maguire as a 9 till Shesko is back. Palace will hammer United a Mateta brace. If Chelsea had Shaw, they would ship him off to Saudi, make money on him. We are too soft to place contracts and agents. Agree completely. No one will want the dead weight from our club. Exactly. Oh God, we've become fans of little faith. Maguire should be kept as a sub bench option. I do agree with that. Maguire and Shaw in the pivot. Yep, or Alan Kirbishley. JB loves the pivot. I do love the pivot. The pivot is the bane of my life. We are so fed up with the team. At least we call or try to laugh about it. Ruben needs time. He needs players that are passionate. Catherine, I don't disagree. Obi says Maguire is part of the leadership core. He communicates the back line with the Lamens. He also communicates with Casemiro. He gets vital goals and adds height into the box. He plays long balls too. And this is what I mean about experience, I've been. I could, the one thing that I say, look, and I'm not going to be a hypocrite, right? Harry Maguire is the best that we've got in terms of the leadership, right? But for me, if that's the standard that we've got, and we know we are, that if Maguire is the yardstick, then we've fallen far as a club. Like, Maguire is probably one of the best that we've got for now. But when you take a step back and you look at the old leadership group that we would have had with Giggs, Keane, Scholes, Beckham, probably Andy Cole, Dwight York, Schmeichel, Vidic, Rio, Pallister, Irwin, Parker. No, as a leadership group, captains on the pitch, it's not Maguire's fault. Maguire is the best that we've got. But my problem right now is we have to keep him in some respects, because, as you say, there is so little leadership now that we're almost forced into keeping these pseudo leadership players because we have zero else. Maguire can't just be sold. He needs the correct replacement. Let's go and eat a marathon bar. Not to be rude, a personal thing, but you answer this. Do you reckon it's a taxi for Pep? I certainly do. I have took enough and now took enough. Do you think it's a taxi for Pep? No. Why would there be a taxi for Pep? I mean, Pep will leave on his own terms. I mean, Pep is not getting sacked. Do you reckon it's a taxi for Pep? No, I don't. No, Pep will go on his own terms. Gets a load of flack, but the way he's more professional. I agree. Negotiations with our existing players should be much easier than buying a new player. Leader of men. Apart from the Greece debacle, he should be a United and England captain. The problem with Maguire was when he had the captaincy, it weighed heavy on him. Maguire should be captain. And when I say that, I don't mean he should be captain now. He should have been the captain. But I think the thing with Maguire, I think the captaincy weighed heavy. Look, some players can be leaders and they don't need the captaincy. And I think I would probably lean towards OB and say that if Maguire was under Fergie, he would have been better. The problem with Maguire is he's been in a he spent his best years. Is there a coincidence that City wanted him? The problem with Maguire is, again, he's been in such bad teams that sometimes good players get misjudged. Sometimes good players are not appreciated. Maguire, now he's not young anymore. He's not going to get better. He doesn't stay fit now either. So I like Maguire. I do like Maguire, but and I do admire that the guys come back. But there comes a point where you have to go, look, if Maguire is injured and injury prone and you're still paying him 100k a week, the question here is, and again, no, this is a more of a rhetorical question, or this is just more of a question out there. Is Harry Maguire worth 100k a week to be here for experience, or is that too much money? What the team need to sit down and have some Mars planets. It's the last year, I think, for Pep. De Ligt is my captain, but Maguire is vice captain. I agree with you. De Ligt for me is my captain. You can see it. You can see with him it is written, or you can see. I can see a Maguire guiding him. De Ligt for me should be captain. Off subject, JB, what was your favourite chocolate bar growing up? What was my favourite chocolate bar growing up? I used to love a Whisper Gold. I'm not going to lie. I used to love a Whisper Gold. So you might not remember this because this was going back some time. I used to love a Cadbury's Fuse bar. They don't do them anymore, but I used to love a Fuse bar. But a Whisper Gold for me was something special. I used to like their walnut whips. Walnut whips were an absolute they were. I love those. Cadbury Spirals as well. Walnut whips, Cadbury Spirals, Cadbury's Caramel, Whisper Gold. Yeah. Topic bars don't exist anymore. Topic bars were. I used to love the old at Christmas time. You used to get the selection things, but it was like they were in a plastic boot and they used to have the netting, but they were like proper size bars. Who out there can realistically get a replacement for you? Can't. You can't, OB. You can't. And that's the thing, right? It's not just a question of replacing him. You can't replace that experience. It's almost like is 100K a week worth keeping him because how much will it cost to replace him? I think the Maguire thing is a interesting conversation. I wasn't really into chocolate bars. I'm the same now. I'd rather spend my pocket money on a new dinky car. Curly Whirlies, Cadbury's Fuse bars, and Cadbury's Dream Bar was amazing. Quick Save always had a big box of them for cheap. Yeah, Cadbury's Fuse bars. Mine was Snickers and crispy rolls. Yeah, you're a young man though, aren't you? Anyone remember the coconut candy wine bars, as in the London Madame Joe's Scotch deep fried Mars bars? Nope. Caramac bars, OB. Oh, I used to love a Caramac. Absolute legendary. I absolutely love those bars. They were my favourite. I don't think you can get them anymore. I don't think Lion Crisp, Dime bars are legendary as well. The one thing I used to hate, which my gran always loved, was fries. The what do you call it? The Turkish thing. The what do you bloody call it? It was fries covered in chocolate, but it was that Turkish stuff. Yeah, that was gross. Classic Mars bars, Twixes, Kit Kats, Aeros. Mint Aero was always a favourite of mine as well. Yeah, legendary stuff. So you weren't the Milky Bar kid? No, no. Sadly, I wasn't blonde. I haven't always been grey. Anyone remember the fish? Yeah, I do. Do you remember the coconut pick and mix sweets? And do you remember truffles? Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. I used to remember when you used to get the Quality Street tins, and they were massive. I mean, those tins used to be absolutely bloody huge. Fish and chip. Anybody remember the salt shakers? So you'd get the plain crisp, and then you'd have to put in the blue salt thing in there. Blackjacks and fruit salad, Turkish delight. That's it. Blackjacks, fruit salad were the best. I used to love those. A wham bar, fries, Turkish delight. That's it. I love the Milky Bar kid. Fair enough. I looked like the Milky Bar kid when I was younger with bleached hair. I love Turkish delight in the tins with ice and yeah. I don't mind gob stoppers at school. Yeah, I used to pop down to the corner shop and used to get a 10p mix, and if I was feeling flash, a 25p mix. You used to have little the golf ball things in them. They were great. Smith's crisp blue salt, yeah. Pear drops. OB used to have this paper shop, right, and it was an old school one, and behind them they'd have all the sweets, and they used to have the little weighing scales, and you'd ask for a quarter of I don't know, pear drops, right? Yeah, back in the day, some bonbons, yeah, a good old 10p mix, and I mean, like, just 1p sweets and 2p sweets. The old comics, yeah. I used to. One of the very first comics I bought was a Beano. Exactly. I think one of the very first comics I bought was a Beano, and it must have been about 20p. I was so pleased. I was so lucky. Bag at Woolies as well. Yeah. Those are the ones in. Well, they're not plastic bags. The old school lucky bags. Yeah. They were the first loot bags, right? So computer games claim the old loot bags, but no. We all know Woolies was the originator of loot bags as well. Safeways would throw you hundreds of shopping bags. Again, right? Imagine talking to kids now about you used to get free carrier bags, but they wouldn't give them monkeys. They would just give you a carrier bag. They wouldn't care. A sixpence broke your teeth when you munched on it in an Xmas pudding. Yep. Football cards with chewing gum in them. Oh God, yes. I do remember those sticks as well. Like the candy sticks that used to come in there. When 99s, yeah. Panini stickers. Oh my God, I used to spend so much money on those things. I remember I'd get my pocket money on a Saturday morning, and they were like 20p a packet. I'd go and spend like £3 on them. I was obsessed. The World Cup ones, Premier League ones. I mean, if I got a United shiny badge, I was happy. I was all over it, absolutely all over it. Stephen says blackjacks, fruit salads, 1p. Good old days. I used to go into the shop, and the girl fancied me. She used to give me everything. I'm sure she did, mate. American hard gums, jelly babies. you can't say she used to fancy me, and she used to give me the American hard gums, mate. I'm sure she did, mate. I'm sure she did. Brilliant. Sherbet dips, yeah. Sugar puffs. Oh, sugar puffs. Yeah. Used to love those. They used to make your wee smell as well. Remember when you lost your first teeth? You got 10p under your pillow. You know what? It cost me like a fiver now. It literally cost me about £5 a tooth. Mama's always a quid. Inflation. To tell you what, yeah, it's about £5 now. The chewing gum with tobacco stickers. Yeah. Yeah, the good old days, right? The good old days where you'd know that we play Crystal Palace and win. Yeah, those days are long gone. So look, guys, I'm going to go. The evening show is absolutely my favourite show. 5p super chunk with the candy cigs. Yeah, those were fantastic. I always used to get my candy cigs from Iceland, I think it was, and they'd have them in those big packets as well. So and we'd always be. I must have been about 5 years old, right? And my mum had 4 kids, age ranges from about. So if I was 5, there would have been one who was 4, 5, 7, and 10. And all of us would walk around the street pretending to smoke. I mean, I'd be laughing my head off now. Ridiculous. Buying a cig for 5p on the way to school. Ice gems, stardust exploding in your mouth. Look, mate, Nikki, what you do in your private time, that's up to you. Nowadays, honestly, Freddo bars are quid. They used to be like 20, 25, no, 10p they were. 10p. Ridiculous. So guys, I'm going to go. I love this late show. This is like, guys, this is my favorite show. Playing Hardcore Conkers. Oh my god, it was ridiculous. But guys, look, fantastic show. Thank you so much for being here, legends of the chat. As always, you know, this channel for me gets bigger and bigger and bigger. You guys, like, I love this show. It just, this is my favorite show where we talk about something and then we just spitball. And this is what this show is for. So look, guys, I'll be back tomorrow at some point. Look, have a good rest of your morning, evening, afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Look, thank you, DJ, absolute legend. Look, guys, you guys, I can't express this enough. Like, well, without you guys, this channel doesn't exist. And you know, you make this place fantastic. Pivot out, Scott. If you know, then you know that I do love the pivot. Not tangents are us. Exactly. That is exactly the way to be. So look, guys, legends of this chat, legends of the channel, you know, absolute fantastic. I will be back. Pivot out. I will be back tomorrow. Have a fantastic rest of your day or wherever you are, and I will speak to you guys tomorrow. Thank you so much, guys, and I will speak to you soon. Take care, guys.